Patty. Thank you for joining us tonight for the ninth Wayne Public Library Program Jazz Series here. I'm thrilled to be able to be here tonight with Nick Stefanacci, a local Wayne resident, and that he is also a wonderful musician who is not only taught here in Wayne, but also around the world and performed around the world, and is back here tonight to talk with us here. So I'm very, very happy. So welcome, Nick.
Hey, how's everyone doing? Thanks, Patty, for having me. This is so great. Thank you for inviting me.
So I'm thrilled that we're here tonight. And let's just start with the questions that I've asked some of the other musicians is, how did you get interested in music? And was saxophone always your first choice?
Yeah. In fourth grade, being a music student in Wayne, the Wayne Public Schools, it was, time for band and time to pick an instrument. And in my family, it wasn't a choice of if I was going to play in band, it was what instrument. I come from a family of musicians. So always been around music my entire life. And actually, J. Chuck Sastre was my first band teacher at Randall Carter Elementary. And so he introduced me to the saxophone. And then when I got to the high school at Wayne Valley, he transitioned to the high school music teacher. And then our relationship really blossomed. He was, one of my first mentors as a musician, as a person. And then we lost him suddenly. Oh Lord, back in 2006, I believe. And then I started, that was my first, philanthropic and adventure. And we started that scholarship, which is still awarded to a high school senior today at both Valley and Hills. So, full circle, just, trying to help people and pass on that passion and that message of music, so yeah, very blessed with that stuff. And I had, a great teacher to start off with. So it was easy to kind of fall in love with it.
So that's a wonderful thing that not only do you come from a musical background, but you had someone outside the family to help foster that interest and also that talent that you innately have. So with saxophone, where you started, or did you play piano or any other instruments?
No, I was lucky enough that I picked the saxophone and it worked for me. It was just, I think it was just meant to be me to play that instrument. Especially as I teach younger kids now. And actually when I first started teaching years and years ago, I would have students come to the house and my parents would hear them, and my dad would say afterwards, Nick, you just never squeaked like that. You never created those sounds of like, beginner struggles with the instrument. So it was just part of me.
That's wonderful. You're very, very blessed to have that. Now, do you play all types of saxophone? Do you play the alto, tenor, and soprano?
Yeah, so in the saxophone family, I played them all: soprano, alto, tenor, bari. My voice kind of really sits in the alto and soprano range. That's kind of where I feel natural. But then I play flute, clarinet, piano. Do all the woodwind stuff. And that's the best way that helps me write and compose, is just being able to play piano, sit down and hear something and figure it out in front of me.
Are there any other musicians who have that same sort of ability to play all those woodwinds? Two come to mind specifically are Ken Poplawski and Dick Johnson. Were they inspirational to you, or were there others who were inspiring to you?
When growing up, the only double that I really started was with my private teacher, Frank Elmo. In high school, he suggested that I start playing flute, if I was going to be a saxophonist, and try to go into college with it. So started playing flute like my second sophomore year of high school. And then when I got to college, my undergrad, it was, okay, you really need to expand your circle of doubles if you really want to play, if you want to work in this world, especially in New York. Anyone in New York, they're great players, a dime a dozen, and they all play all the wins, and it's just like, okay, all right, let's get everything together here. Let's get a little more prepared.
Now, were you a marching band at Wayne Valley?
Yeah, I was a marching band person. And back then it was it was cool because if you wanted to participate in bands, you had to do marching bands. I know in recent years, they've kind of changed that philosophy where it's your choice. But part of being in band is having that experience of competition, of a different type of band setting, which marching band is. I was never thrilled with marching band, to be completely honest, because I just like to play. I didn't want to worry about marching and making spots on the field. But you had to do it. And you know what? I learned a lot about just playing in bands. I learned how to memorize music in marching bands. So there's a lot to learn from that skill set, that if kids have the option to do it or option not to, they're kind of missing, part of that band, tradition.
That's a good point. I was also in marching band in Ramsey High School when I think we may have been rivals,
Yeah,
and
probably.
but it was, as you say, a great experience to have and put into the education of music, to learn how to do something different. And I think kind of think on your feet like a waitress or a waiter does. You have to always think 5 steps ahead, literally. So I think it's a great learning experience.
Yeah, and it's such a great vehicle to learn how to multitask, you know, playing, trying to keep in step, and then you want me to go backwards and you want me to run, so it just kind of gets the brain kind of going on all cylinders, which um, a lot of kids need that today. But more importantly, it was interesting having the competition side of music, because that's kind of really left out of music, in a lot of settings. But having competition, saying, "Whoa, we're really good," or "Whoa, that band really just smoked us tonight," so let's get better to compete with them again next week. So that's kind of fun.
And the fact too that you did it as a student yourself, that when you then came to teach at Wayne Hills and Wayne Valley, you had that ability. But before I jump ahead to that, I want to talk about your high school, your college. Where did you go right after you graduated high school?
So I was lucky enough to get into New Jersey City University. It's so and their music department is uh, just on par with all the big schools out there. We were very lucky that we're right across the river from New York. So all of my teachers were all either New York session players, Broadway players, band leaders, city ballet, New York Phil guys. So they were all doing this at the highest level in probably the toughest city in the world to do it at, and then they would come and teach us. So it was a world-class education. Really kicked my butt as a young musician. I had to get some things together, but the reason I play the saxophone I do, the way I play it, is because of that training in college. It was cool. It was the right place for me.
You had mentioned earlier that one of your professors was Pete McGinnis, who I had the great fortune of interviewing last month, who is now a professor up at William Patterson University. Now, did you study with him to learn arranging and composing, or what was he teaching at that time?
He When I was there, he was teaching the lab band, which is like the freshman level big band, set up at Jersey City. And oh my Lord, like what a set of ears. And then he would, and singing wise, I mean, like he's just like Chet Baker, and he would vocalize your part and then harmonize it, and he's playing trombone and playing keyboard, and you're just sitting there saying, I have so much to learn. Yeah, but what a sweetheart, and just a monster of a musician. And then, like you said, you start hearing his writing, his big band writing and arranging. You're just like, okay, all right, let's pay attention to what he has to say. Let's just focus.
Yeah, he really brings something very special to the table, and it was a great interview that I was so happy to have. And you could tell that as I spoke to him, he put on his teaching hat, so to speak, and I learned more than I could possibly, and I hope others did too. So, now, did you when you were in high school, I think you said that when you were 15, you were also able to participate in William Patterson in their big band in the summer, and you were one of the youngest, if not the youngest, to be accepted.
Yeah, at that time I was, very fortunate that I was the youngest member accepted into the William Patterson summer jazz big band. And I'm sure that's changed now because players today, they're younger and younger. They're like monsters. I'm like, oh my God, thank God I grew up when I did, because I wouldn't be able to compete with some of these young kids. I mean, they're really smoking on these instruments, and they're playing changes. It's wonderful. But yeah, at the time I was very fortunate to get in. And Dr. Marconi was the band leader back then. And I mean, that summer band, I mean, I got to play with the great trumpeter Freddie Hendrix. If you know Freddie at all, he was a William Patterson grad. They had killing players in that summer band. The drummer Mark Gargiulo was in there. Some phenomenal musicians, and I was extremely young, just trying to hold on, and count measures and play notes, and very intimidated. But again, just a great learning environment for me.
Is that where you also had the opportunity to meet Professor David Dempsey?
Yeah, right. And then right, so I met Dr. Dempsey, and then I did the William Patterson summer jazz camps as well up there with him. And again, just entrenched in an education that I really had no idea about. I learned so much. It was so great just to meet all these great players and just be around it, full time. It was cool.
What's amazing to me too is the fact that you were living in Wayne, grew up in Wayne, and right in your backyard is William Patterson University's jazz program. You can't ask for
Yeah, I
anything
mean,
easier.
talk about being lucky. Talk about just literally falling into the right spot, I guess, right?
So after you graduated from Jersey's City State College, is that when you then came to work as a teacher here in Wayne?
Yeah, I was fortunate that Chuck Sastre was still alive at the time, and there was an opening, and he was very integral to me being hired in Wayne at Wayne Valley. And I got to take over for another teacher, Mr. Solano, who I had throughout the Wayne programs. So it was really cool. It was really great to take over and to step into those shoes. Um, and I had a great time teaching in Wayne. Just it ended short, and abruptly, but you take every experience and try to learn from it and try to better yourself. And it makes you a whole person, which is great.
Now, from there, when you left Wayne, you went abroad to Spain for, well, you took us, well, you tell me about it, please.
Yeah. So again, I abruptly left Wayne because I had this great opportunity to go study at Berkeley College of Music, their new abroad campus in Valencia, Spain. And I was accepted as a grad student in their contemporary performance saxophone area. It was just too good of an opportunity to pass up. And that experience led me to performing all throughout the world, international contacts. I mean, people that have since played on my forthcoming albums, and it's all because of that experience. And so at the time, my parents were a little shaky about that decision, and I was too, because I was working full time, I was tenured, it was steady, it was safe. But this was just an opportunity that was probably once in a lifetime, and thankfully I took it. um and yeah, I mean, I ate great food for a year, learned about the Spanish tradition and culture. And more importantly, it just really broadened my musical scope, because the Mediterranean sound and all the scales are from like the Middle East that are influenced in that sound. I got a chance to study and learn and say, oh my God, I know about this much about music, growing up in the Western, civilization, and so it really kind of just opened up my ears and my writing and my composing to hear that stuff now. So very, very cool, very great.
So you got your second master's in from Berklee School of Music.
Yeah, I got my second one this past year during the pandemic, actually. Um, I was before the
Oh, excuse
pandemic
me, I'm
started.
sorry to jump in there. Your first master's was from the Berklee School of Music, correct?
Yeah, in Spain.
Okay.
And then my second master's was through Berkeley's online degree program.
You made very good use of the pandemic time. I tell you, this is amazing. Now, what was the difference between the two masters? Now, obviously, one was abroad and one was online, but what was your course of study? How do they differ?
Yeah, so um, before the pandemic started, I'm back to school teaching full time, but I wanted to improve my music production and engineering skills. And so I was looking for online programs because I didn't want to leave my job again. I wanted to be able to do it part time, study, and still teach. And so I came across Berkeley's online program. Um, and so I applied for it in January of 2020, so before the pandemic, and I was accepted in February, and I was signed up for my first class in April, and then everything shut down in March. So I upped my classes to take a full load in April, and I banged out a second master's within a year online while teaching online, and that was in music production and engineering. And what fascinated me about that online degree program is that it was specifically built to be hosted online. And it's been around, I want to say at least 10 years, I think. So by now they've kind of have all the cranks taken out of it and all the wrinkles, and so it was a fascinating online experience to see how they ran an online program, how they were able to create work and assignments for the online, students, and like just wow, just really hats off because it was an intense year of studying. But like you said, I mean, I could not have planned it better with the pandemic. Everyone was sitting at home going crazy on Instagram and then in Facebook, and I was just trying to find more hours in the day just to do my work and keep up with my teaching job. But it was great.
Well, that's really prescient that you had that opportunity and that you had signed up for it. I wish I had that crystal ball that you seem to have, and I could have made better use of my time too. But
Oh my,
very impressive.
it was funny because when we got back to school this past year full time in September, everyone still was talking about like the pandemic and what they did, and everyone was, oh, I'm so refreshed, I'm relaxed. I'm like, I'm more stressed out now because I was just got done with this thing. I had assignments every week trying to make deadlines. But no, yeah, I mean, completely blessed at how it worked out. I couldn't have asked for anything better, to be honest.
That's wonderful. So now you have your bachelor's and your two masters are from very music specific or smaller schools. And somebody had emailed me a question asking, and on behalf of their daughter, who is also a sax player and looking to pursue a music education. The question was, do you recommend um, a large university like Rutgers or a more specialized music school like Manhattan School of Music or Berkeley or whatnot, and what advice you might have for her?
Yeah, that's a great question. So thank you for emailing that in. And first and foremost, because I'm still a high school teacher, so I deal with this a lot with my kids. Um, I I make sure that the student has the ability to not only get a degree in performance, but to do something else so they could pay bills. I'm a performer deep down, producer, artist, but I still need to teach to pay the bills and to do all that stuff. So I first, really make sure my students have that outlet so they're not, really struggling, to be completely honest with you. And then so the first thing about, if they're looking at a conservatory like Manhattan or Juilliard, just make sure that there's a degree program, that they can, I hate to use the word fall back on, but rely on, because it's not really falling back because you could still pursue your passion because that's what I'm doing. So, but you still have to eat, you have to pay your bills. So as long as wherever they're applying, they have that capability, then apply. And I mean, I had horror stories from all of my college auditions, except Jersey City, where I was accepted. And I truly believe in, like, the title of my second album is All for a Reason. And I truly believe in that mantra that everything happens for a reason. And I was meant to go to Jersey City. I was meant to study there. And then that took me here and blah, blah, blah. So, apply, put your best foot forward, and then things do happen for a reason. And at the beginning, with all of my college undergrad auditions, I was upset. I thought I wasn't good enough. I was furious, at what happened, to some of those auditions. But everything happens for a reason. And I was weaving my way and pointed and guided to Jersey City. So it's all good.
It's always beneficial to have hindsight as we get older to realize that the decisions and things that bring us from point A to point C, that you have to go through point B to get to that, it makes sense. But if you're younger and you're not getting the response that you think you should be getting, it is a very frustrating and very upsetting, but that's part of the growing process.
Yep, absolutely. And like the other thing I tell all my students who are, want to go into performance areas, um, you know, unfortunately, performance is just like a sports team, like a Division I sports program where it's a numbers game where, if they already have, say, 3 saxophones in the program, they may only have room for 2 more because they can only have 5. So it's not that you're not good enough. It's sometimes it's a straight numbers game. So, you can't get, it's very easy to get depressed and get dark about things, but you kind of, again, you have to kind of see the light through the end of the tunnel, and you'll get there. It'll be fine.
You're very, very fortunate to have two passions that I can see and two talents, and not everyone has two, much less one. And so the fact that you have the wonderful talent and passion for being a musician and performing and sharing and being able to share that knowledge, you have a passion I can tell as a teacher, and that is in itself is a special gift. And we've all had great teachers, we've all had bad teachers, and unfortunately, I think it weighs for me heavily on the bad teachers. So the ones who bring something to the table that inspire and ignite a passion, it's amazing that you are able to have both of these, and I really applaud you for that.
Oh, thank you. I think it's a lot of coffee and a lot of sleep whenever I can.
So coughing induced passion.
Right,
Okay.
right. I think it's a new Starbucks flavor.
So yes, we can make let's market this and maybe we can change
Please,
the world.
please.
Now, when you were in Spain, I believe that you were able to you did a private entertainment for the former Spanish ambassador, or what that was in New York City.
All right, yeah. I mean, so talk about a crazy small world. When I when I got back from Spain, I was just a full-time musician. I couldn't find a teaching job to save my life, so I was taking, and this is what, like, this is why I tell my students that I want them to have, something to rely on, because I don't want them going through that situation. But I was taking every gig under the sun just to pay my health bills, my health, like, benefit and health insurance bills, which is crazy expensive. So what happened was I was playing in a private event in the city for a catering company, or not a catering company, but like a music company for that does events. And at the time, the Spanish ambassador from New York happened to be an attendee, uh, liked what I was playing, introduced himself to me, and not as the Spanish ambassador, just as, person X. And I had no idea who he was. And I said, "Oh, thanks. That's so sweet." And this is why you always have to be great and sweet to people and nice to people, because I had no clue who I was talking to. To me, it was just another older person at a party it was like a Thursday night, and it was like midnight. I was like, what are these people doing? But so he asked for my card, so I gave him my card. And then, like, the next week, I got an email from his secretary, and I learned that he was the current Spanish ambassador in New York City. And then he hired me to play all of his private events at the consulate. And I'm just like, what just happened? And then obviously, when I got to talk with them at some of the private shows, we talked about me coming back from Spain, and then we had that connection, which was really special and really kind of weird of how the timing worked out. But yeah, what a sweet guy. Oh and those parties were just great. I was literally the only person, and he would put music on and I would play to the music. Um, it was just me and all these consulates and diplomats and I was trying to get the license plates. I was trying to get one of them to give me their like diplomat license plate so I could park anywhere in New York. When I'm trying to drive around the village looking for parking for some of these gigs. But no, like really, really, really great people, really sweet, and you would never know that he was kind of in charge of things over here.
It's amazing how much serendipity you have in your life and how many points kind of come full circle. You have growing up in Wayne, going to school, high school, teaching there. You have going to Spain and then coming back and then happening to have this connection with the consulate in Spain in New York City. Like this is just kind of amazing. You have someone following you around, but like, okay, let's put these two connections together now. So.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I need to write a book, for at least like the three people that would read it.
We'll add it to the library, so that'll make it more than that.
After I get my library card from you, I have to come back and rejoin. Oh, she told me about this before our meeting. Now I just feel awkward that I'm not a member anymore. I have to come back.
It's a free card, so come on in. You don't need to
I
have
will.
a special license plate or diplomat plate to be able to get that.
Oh my, excellent, excellent.
So here we are in October. We're approaching November, fastly approaching Thanksgiving. And I think it's wonderful that you were able to perform at the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. Was this as a student, or was this as a teacher, or was this both?
No, this was at a very dear friend of mine is the guitarist for Mark Anthony, and they happened to be at the Latin Billboard Awards, a couple years ago out in Vegas. And he ran into some friends, this band from Bogota, Colombia, Diamante Electrico, and they got talking. He met their like management and their publicist, and they got talking that they got hired for the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, and that they were looking for a horn section in New York to be a part of the show. And so my friend called me. I was actually adjunct at Five Towns College out in Dix Hills, and I get this phone call from my friend, and he said, "Nick, you have to call me back immediately. I have a gig from you that you're not going to want to pass up." So, and believe it or not, out in Dix Hills, I had like no cell phone reception. So I end my class that I was teaching, music production, undergrad course, and I jump in my car and I'm like trying to get down the highway a little bit to find reception so I could call my friend back before I missed the boat, because a lot of that stuff is, first people that call back, first people that respond get the gig. So, I was able to get reception. I called them. I said, "Yeah, what's going on?" He's like, "Well, my friends, Diamante Electrico, they actually just won that year. They won the Grammy for like best rock album or something like that. They got hired to do the Thanksgiving Day Parade, and they need a horn section. And so I thought of you. And so boom, bam. Next thing you know, I'm on a float for Macy's, and just having fun. My Lord, so great, so sweet.
Was it cold that day, just out of curiosity, or was it a warmer day?
We had a beautiful day. Oh my, it was had to be in the 60s. Because I don't like the cold, and that was something that started in marching band in high school. I would be on the football field in late November in December, freezing. But we had a beautiful day. It was fantastic. Yeah, and probably another once in a lifetime opportunity. Hopefully not. I would love to do it again. But yeah, it was special. It was very special.
That's awesome. So, how would you describe the genesis of your music? I know that you call it pop, fusion, funk, jazz. These are all terminologies, but where do you think you started, and where are you right now, and what was in between?
There was a lot of in between, a lot of heartbreak. No, I started writing in college as an undergrad, and that writing was really more towards like the classic, jazz quartet, setup: drums, bass, piano, sax. obviously being a jazz saxophonist, studying all that lingo, I wanted to kind of express myself, with originals in that genre first. Um, and then as I graduated college and started to actually work as a full-time musician and realized that, wow, like 98% of my work that actually pays bills is like pop music and playing weddings, doing all these events like that, not playing jazz, not playing over chord progressions and knowing standards. Then my writing started to evolve because I said, well, if this is what I'm getting hired for, maybe I have a voice in that same kind of genre. And so I started writing music. And it was really interesting because I wrote my first album. Um, and then my brother-in-law listened to it and he said, Nick, um, you must really enjoy Steely Dan. And I had no idea who they were at the time. And this is after, right, it's that face, right? But this is the truth. So this is after college. I'm like in my 20s, and I didn't know who Steely Dan was. And so I went back to listen to them. I said, oh my God, my writing is kind of that, like, Earth, Wind, Fire, Chicago, Steely Dan thing where it's horns, kind of funky, kind of pop driven, but with vocals. And so then once I started to listen to what they were doing, then that kind of influenced my second album, and my third album. And then, as we were talking before, I always try to push something different with my album. And that's what everyone's streaming and everyone's just releasing single after single. But I think what we're missing as an audience is, an album is really special because an album is a collection of work from a specific period of time where, okay, this was this artist influence and you could hear it on this album. And then like the Beatles, you go to another album and say, oh my God, they totally flipped what they were just doing. And that encompasses this time period for them. And so as an artist, I hate releasing singles. I released a couple singles here and there, but like my next album is going to be another album release because it is a very specific time of my history, and I wanted to encapsulate that on one disc so people can go back and listen to it. And I think we missed that from the whole streaming thing now, and every artist releases a new single every other week, and it's just too much. But that's my own personal pet peeve with the music industry right now. But so every album I try to push it a little bit further. And so this new album is actually way more funk, like James Brown type driven stuff. A lot of vocals on this album. And there's a great song. It's called Unity Funk, and that's going to be one of like the singles that I push when I release the album. And that's just all about trying to come together in this world because it's just a mess, for how great the human race is. It's a mess. And so one of the cool things about this is I have a friend who works with Bootsy Collins. And so I'm going to try to get Bootsy to play bass on it. So that would be cool. That'd be really special.
So speaking of bases, there's a nice little segue you gave me right there. I had also the fortune of interviewing Christian McBride last month, and you had come up in conversation because we were talking about the great Bernard Purdie, and who he had interviewed with Chuck Rainey earlier last April, and I was just fascinated. So of course you're saying Steely Dan and Home at Last, which is a Purdie shuffle,
Oh
which
yeah.
is everybody knows a Purdie shuffle, and he's just a great man who created one of the best sounds and drums for that. So you had the opportunity to record now twice with him, correct?
Yeah, yeah. Bernard is just a monster, obviously behind the kit, and such a sweet man. And the first session we had was the title track of my second album, All for a Reason. He's the drummer on it. Um, and that was just such a great day that we got to spend together, and looking back on it, it was a great day we got to spend, and I was very um fortunate and privileged that I could go pick him up at his house, drive him out to the studio, so we had all this time together in the car talking about music, talking about life. Then he sets up his drums, and he did 2 takes, and it was perfect. It, like, the first take was perfect, and he said to me, "Let's do another one so you could choose." I said, "Okay, that's great," but there was no need. The first take was perfect. And so then I had the opportunity to drive him back, and the funniest part about it was we stopped at a diner on close to his house on the way home because we both hungry, long day, because the studio was actually out in Long Island, so it was a long trip. It was a long day for him. So we stop at the diner, and we're eating, and he's just smiling, just really broad smile, ear to ear. And I'm like, "Bernard, what, you're smiling, like, what's, I'm happy you're happy, but what's going on?" And he said to me, "They're playing all the hits today." And I'm like, what are you talking about?" And on, like, the satellite radio in the diner, he was on, like, he was the drummer for, like, the 5 previous songs, and he's like, "Yeah, they're playing all the hits today. They must know I'm here." And so, we were just dying. But, like, again, like, such a sweet man, and his history, his discography, oh my, wow, that's just impressive. So yeah, great, good stuff.
Well, you mentioned James Brown, and this also was another nice segue to go back to Christian McBride, who
Mm,
James Brown was a huge influence on Christian McBride, and of course he had the opportunity to play with him. But what you were saying about your song Unity,
yeah.
it mirrors and is very similar to what Christian McBride was also talking about, and what he's trying to do with his music, and present a positive, and a hope for that we can be together in this world in a much more helpful and healthy way. Now, you also have had the opportunity to interact with Christian McBride, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mentioned to you, he probably won't remember me, but when he was getting ready to do some tribute shows for James Brown out in LA, he put together a rehearsal band in New York, and I happened to be one of the saxophonists in the section. And I mean, it was just a rehearsal band, but my lord, like, what a great couple sessions, a couple, great hangs, just talking with the guys, and just, again, being around that genius is just so inspiring, because it's it's the little things about how he would approach a rehearsal, how he would approach practicing something, that you learn as an educator, as a performer, that you could take to all your other little sections of life. And so that stuff was just so priceless. Yeah.
Before we talk a little bit more about your touring, and your musical career, I want to just take a step back towards you being an educator. And we had the fortunate, I gotta stop saying everything's fortunate, but it was, that you and I met about 10 years ago, when you, I think, just did a blind call, and happened to get me and I'm the AV librarian for the music collection, and just said, "Hey, I need to get some jazz CDs." And I was like, "Well, I'm the daughter of a jazz musician, so, and I'm also in charge of the collection, so sure, I'll just pull a bunch of stuff for you." And that's how you and I met. And I love the fact that you're bringing um, this wonderful jazz as in a format to show the kids. You can talk about it, you can try to teach it, but they have to hear it. And so I'm curious, what, as an educator, what is your approach to teaching younger kids, and then in high school as well?
Yeah, that. So right when we connected, I was actually teaching at Randall Carter, where I started playing the saxophone with J. Chuck Sastre. I mean, again, like, the circles, it's insane. Um, but they brought me there to kind of revamp that program at the elementary school, and that was one of the first things that came to mind, was just exposure. And so it was a cold call. And then, actually, from there, I got in touch with Rutgers Library to go pick up, like, some sheet music that they were going to discard. So I went down and I collected, like, mailbox crates, mail crates of, like, old sheet music that I brought back, just to start, like, a library at the elementary school. Again, it's just about exposure. What can I show them? What can they touch? What can they physically hear? Um, and so, with young kids, man, they're so cool, because they just pick up things. And what I found the best was, at the elementary level, was instead of teaching them, like the baby way of counting, like TT and Tata and all that stuff, I was starting to teach them one and two and by fifth grade, they had it. And so then there was no transition from them to go to middle school where you traditionally start to teach that type of counting and understanding at the music level. They're already doing it. And I was teaching them scales. I mean, I had graders playing six major scales. I mean, that's half of them. And I have, some high school kids now, they can't play six. So you could teach them at a very young age and bring it to them methodically, and with some enthusiasm, and they do it, they respond. And that was the coolest part with the young kids, is that, they will pick it up and they will do it, because they're so accepting of new thoughts, and so kind of, marveled at different ideas, so they kind of soak it up. And then at the high school level, I mean, by that time you get the attitudes, and you try to remind them that music is fun. And one of the best tools that I have in my shed is, that I do this full time, and I could relate to them stories about performing and touring and all that stuff. And it's so that helps me a lot to relate to them, to say, look, this is possible. You can do this. You could have a full-time job. You could survive. You could pick and choose gigs that you want to play. It's a beautiful thing when you have that option. So yeah.
It's interesting how you say about the younger ones being little sponges, and when I'm sorry to keep harping back to Christian McBride's interview, but he and his wife created Jazz House Kids in
Yeah.
Montclair, and then when she was at a BGO event, that she was absolutely terrified when she found out the age group that she was supposed to be working with, and immediately fell in love with the kids because they respond. It's a purity and there's no filters, and
No.
it made her want to teach these kids, and they're doing very well, and they even have kids as young as 4, but mostly 8 to 18, which is
Yeah.
great. So I want to know, where were you if in a different universe I needed you as my teacher so that I could possibly have been a better saxophonist, and you needed me in your early 20s before then to introduce you to Steely Dan. So
Yeah, but that's the truth, That's, again, I thought I was so cool and so hip, and there you go. It took my brother-in-law to listen to my first album and say, "Hey, you sound like Steely Dan." And, from there, and now I'm a huge fan, huge Steely Dan fan. And actually one of my other teachers at Jersey City was Walt Weiskopf, who's now the tenor saxophonist with them. So, I mean, just monsters, just monster players doing all the biggest shows. It's incredible.
what a great compliment to be told that you sound like Steely Dan. Last time I did see them was many years ago, and Chris Potter was a youngin, and he had just started his career, and look where he is now.
Awesome. Yeah, amazing. Love Chris. Love Chris. And he's a William Patterson alum, right? Correct?
To be honest, I'm not sure.
It's either Chris Potter, I think, or is it Eric Alexander?
I'm
I
not
think,
sure. I'll have to look up
yeah.
that.
Yeah, I think one of them is a Willie P alum, which is, fantastic. They have such great players up there.
So you have toured or currently touring with Cindy Bradley, who is a cross-genre artist. What does cross-genre artist mean, aside from, is it a melding of two genres or back and forth?
Yeah, she's really kind of a commercial jazz trumpeter. But she has so much soul in her playing that I call her cross genre. But she's really, like it's like smooth jazz, but again, like she has just so much soul in the way that she plays. I call her cross genre, but that's not, it's commercial jazz. But that's just, those shows are so fun, and those crowds are so into the genre of music, and so loving and so caring, for the artists on stage. It's really awesome to play with her. It's a lot of fun. And just again, get to meet so many great players and people around this country, which is just so wonderful.
So are you touring now, and are things starting to open up since the pandemic, or how is that working out for you?
Yeah, and so like Cindy totally inspires me, because she's a signed artist to a record deal, record label, has management. Every time she releases a single, it goes like the top 10 of like the Billboard Smooth Jazz charts. And she's a full-time teacher as well, so she inspires me, like if she can do it, then why can't I? But so during the school year, we have a few shows here and there, but really over the summer months, when we're both off and we're both kind of broke, that's when she starts touring a lot more. And it's just great. It's a great way to pass by my summer. I'm not sitting at home. I get to go play music and not have to worry about getting up the next day for school, which is amazing.
Now, you said she's a or a trumpeter with
Yep.
or many genres. What you brings to mind immediately is it wasn't it Cynthia in the Sly and the Family Stone who was their trumpeter?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's absolutely correct. And what a great band that was. Like,
Have
fantastic.
have you borrowed from there as well in your composing and arranging?
No, I think, I really tend to do more of like that jazz fusion type, funk type groove centric, with some jazz harmonies kind of spliced in there, and try to find some melodies for it.
That's awesome. We got to get you hooked up somehow with Christian McBride because he does his funk performances, his brother Mister, the DJ, and then he also plays along with that. He did say that he is looking for someone to start carrying around all the equipment that he's getting kind of tired. So maybe if you
I would
volunteer.
I would gladly carry around his equipment just to be around that person more, because he's just he's just an inspiration too, and you have to be around those people because there's just so many negative people in this world that you have to find people that inspire you. That's so healthy for you.
So one of the other things that we talked about earlier was during the pandemic, you started working on a project that was with the cutting room in New York City, and I find this absolutely fascinating. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so as we mentioned before, most of my friends are singer songwriters, so they're all doing these, home concerts, these like Facebook live streams, whatever, Twitch, but they're singer songwriters, so they're playing songs that everybody knows and they're taking requests. And I said, well, that stinks. I'm a saxophonist and no one wants to hear me play a blues for an hour. So how am I going to keep my brand, going, during a pandemic? Because that was really the struggle for a lot of independent artists, is how do you keep your fans engaged? And so I was just flipping through the television one day in between grad school projects and teaching, and came across an old James Lipton Inside the Actor's Studio show. And so I watched that and I said, man, this is such fascinating television to see these actors and actresses kind of stripped down to their bare essentials of like who they are and how they go about their art. And then it kind of just clicked on me to try to do that type of thing, but with music, and kind of infuse it with like MTV Unplugged. And so I said, well, this is a great idea, but I don't want to do this from my bedroom or my bathroom or my basement, because we see enough of walls, every day in this pandemic mode. So I went to my friend who owns the Cutting Room in New York, and I said, Steve, I have this idea for a show. What are your thoughts about it? And we'll live stream it. We'll follow all the guidelines for CDC and COVID to make sure everyone's safe. And he was open to it. So we started doing live streams from the Cutting Room, where I would bring out artists and kind of interview them, and they would perform, and we would talk about the music, their background. So this kind of like Inside the Actor's Studio, MTV Unplugged type of mashup. And then, they opened up over the summer. And so we had our first live show with an audience last month with a dear friend of mine, Kat London. And then November 3rd, we're back at the Cutting Room with the one and only DMC of Run DMC. He has some new music, and there's some special things that are going to happen that night. So I don't want to give too much away. But that's, November 3rd. It's a Wednesday coming up. And the great thing about the series is that it's early. It's a 7:30 show. It's 1 hour. So you can come to the city, get dinner, come to the show, and be home, and it's not midnight, which is great. And the Cutting Room is such a beautiful view. The stage is gorgeous. So yeah, that's Pop Filter, and that also kept me busy during my studies and everything else last year.
Where is the cutting room located in New York?
So that's 30 32nd and Fifth Ave, so like the lower, kind of the lower east side. So it's a great location. They have food, they have a full bar. They do check for your COVID, vaccine, so you could show them a picture on your phone or your card, whatever. But they will ask you for that. And yeah, this should be a lot of fun with DMC because he's just such a legend. So I'm excited to have him out for that.
So, for those of you who are not so familiar with Daryl McDaniels, who is DMC of Run DMC, he's also a Wayne resident, and I had a pleasure of meeting him because he did a program with our young adults a number of years ago about spoken word and rap and poetry, and he's just a gentle soul. He's extremely talented, and the other reason I was fortunate to talk to him about is he come out with a documentary around that time where he was searching for his birth parent and finding out his own adoption story. And it's just an absolutely moving and wonderful documentary that he did. He's so much more than what we know him as is just DMC from Run DMC. He's really a gentleman and extremely talented and kind. There's something about him, and the more musicians I meet, the more I realize how kind everyone is.
Yeah, yeah. He's like you said, he's just kind. And so I'm looking forward to hear that story because I don't know it yet myself. But yeah, just looking forward to doing that one with him.
That's exciting. Now, is there anything else you would like to share about some of your earlier CDs between number 1 and number 8, which is coming out next month?
Yeah. Oh man. Like I said, each album of mine, really is a timepiece for that period of my life. And so if you get really bored one day and you want to listen to the discography, you'll definitely hear the evolution of my writing and some things where I was trying to go for, but I didn't quite reach. There's I think it's my fourth album. It's called Status. I think it's the fourth one. I lost track. I apologize. I need to do my homework. But that was an EP that we did. It was like a 5 or 6 song EP. And I didn't quite get some of what I was going for as the composer, but you could hear like what I was trying to do because that's a little more electronic, infused, a little more production based stuff, whereas kind of stepping away from live instruments and kind of going into that realm for a second. And again, it's just who was influencing me at the time and what I was listening to, and trying to experiment with my own sounds. And then, this, like I said, this new album coming up is really like a funk driven pop fusion. That's where I get the name, because I don't know how to explain it other than like pop fusion kind of vehicle, which I'm really excited about because as the composer and the writer, there's some really good material on there, and it's just yeah, like I said, and if we get Bootsy on that track, I mean, whoo, I'll be in heaven a little bit more, closer to the gates.
So I think you're being just a little bit too hard on yourself when you talk about Status, and I'm going to take you to task on that one. Because as we were talking earlier, that album, you had to make that album to get from the previous one to the next one to the next one to the next one. And again, it's a chain of how we create anything and develop. So do not disparage yourself, and I won't accept that. Their new album, I believe, is called New Funk, NUFUNK, correct?
So NU and then capital F, capital N, capital K. So like funk is kind of like abbreviated, if that can be abbreviated. I don't know. I was trying to make it cool. Like it was like a Christian McBride thing, like what would he do? But yeah, so that should be coming out soon. I'm excited about that one. And I think that's like one of the coolest aspects of being an indie artist is that there's no record label or management telling me, oh, I can't release that. It doesn't sound like you. So I get to explore. I get to have these moments of creativity and say, okay, where can I push this and where can I pull it back a little bit too? So that's exciting.
I think during this pandemic, I have what really got me through it because music is such a large part of my life and my emotions and my being. Is there were a lot of musicians who were doing live streams once a week. John Pizzarelli continues to do his every Thursday. In fact, I think he is doing it before he performs at Birdland tomorrow night. So I mean, the man is just unstoppable. And there's other musicians who I do their weekly live streams and to have that influx of music coming in is just like a salve to the soul. But I totally also want to touch base about the fact that the album experience. I'm so glad that you said that because
Mm.
people who are younger and don't understand. And as I talked about in my interview with Rave Tessar, there is a resurgence to uh, um, excuse me, records, LPs coming out, a resurgence in having record players and such, and getting to the analog experience. But
Mm.
growing up, I can't begin to tell you how many records I would just sit and listen to, and like you said, it almost is a time marker for your life. You know, in high school, I was a big prog rock fan, and I was listening to albums of Yes because their songs were almost an entire album. You know,
Right.
and then taking my dad's jazz collection and sitting down and listening to them and cherry picking. So I find now if I download music or I get a CD, I take the whole thing and I listen to it over and over and over, and it becomes it permeates me. And I think you're on to something very important here with how things have changed, and it's kind of sad actually.
Yeah, it's I learn more about artists that I love from like their B-sides. Like yeah, great. Listening to Michael Jackson hits are great and fun, but there's so many other great songs on like Working Night and Day on that album that weren't like the hits, but there's killer writing. Like, I mean, I had no clue until recently that Paul McCartney and Stevie Wonder um, are the composers on like two of the songs on that album. And then you go back and you listen to it and you say, "Oh, that's definitely a Stevie Wonder song," and oh, that's definitely a Paul McCartney song because you could hear the harmonies and how they move. Um, and so if you're only listening to the singles that the labels are pushing, you miss out on so much great music that these artists, and then myself, that we really try to do something different with. So yeah, I mean, I learn more from like the B-sides, than the hits, because the hits are the hits and that's cool, but there's, such more deeper meaning to songs that don't get played.
Hopefully, once we get back to live performances and people have the ability to sit and listen to music for an hour or hour and a half and be exposed to all the music of that performer, they'll start to again appreciate the greater scope of things. And I'm so glad that you mentioned that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's the goal.
Well, I really appreciate your talking with me tonight. And we're at time now, so I'm going to wrap it up here. So you can follow Nick on Instagram. It's at the @ Sweet Lion Music, and that's capital SWEET underscore capital LION underscore capital MUSIC. Is it not the @ Did I say that wrong?
No, no, it's just every time I laugh because it's the worst Instagram handle ever. It's so long and there's underscores and people try to like find me and most of my I just say, give me your phone and I'll find it for you because it's just but now like I'm in so deep with that handle, I gotta stick with it. Yeah, but yeah, so Sweet Lion Music is my record label and brand. So part of the branding, I want to, keep that the same, and it's so funny.
Before we wrap it up, I'm so sorry that I totally forgot to mention. I did want to talk to you just a little bit more of you as a producer and then also as a philanthropist.
Mm, yeah. So, any questions about that stuff or?
Why don't you share what is how it's important to you and what you try to help others achieve?
Yeah. So, as a producer, the role is my go-to is Quincy Jones. That's my role model as a producer, and it's how do we find the best material for the artist? What's the artist vision? And then how do we incite that performance on the record. And I think, and if that means I have to write parts for it, or, send it out to a drummer to play drums on it or something. I think that's what Quincy does so beautifully, is how he orchestrates his sessions, and the players he gets on them to achieve those goals. So that's kind of what I do as a producer. And then as a philanthropist, uh, the Sastre scholarship um, was just something that I owed him, because he gave me so much in this world. I miss him every day. And then my other big thing is the Promise Music Festival, which benefits children's hospitals. So that was actually when I was teaching still in Wayne at Randall Carter, I had a chance to work with the special needs class, and those kids, I mean, they weren't going to, be performers and go to Juilliard, but they they appreciated what we did, and that little bit of time we spent with each other, they just cherished that. So that opened up my mind to, think, okay, how can we help other kids in that same position? And so the Promise Music Festival, I'm trying to get it back off the ground this year, because last year, obviously, the pandemic. But that goes to I work with CHOP, the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, and all the money raised from that goes directly to them. And it's interesting because when I've been talking to a lot of philanthropic people, they always ask me, well, specifically, what does it go for? Does it go to cancer research? Does it go to this? And I leave it open to the hospital, because every year their needs change. And one year it may go to research and development, and the next year it may go to getting new beds. But I don't want so I don't want to put a limit on, like, oh no, it's only for this. When the greater need, it needs to be met. So and that's some people advise me, oh, well, you should really pick what it is. But that's just not where it sits right in my heart. So I leave it open to that. And like I said, hopefully we can get it back off the ground this year after the pandemic. But it's all good. And if I could, use music to help people, whether it be as a teacher or as, an advocate in this, philanthropic venture, then that's kind of what I have to do, because I do have a gift. So I have to help people.
I'm so glad that you mentioned this about the Promise Festival, because um, as we see, more and more schools are taking music programs out, which is probably one of the stupidest things that can be out there, because we all know it, and it's been shown that it helps with math skills and such. But the other thing I want to say is, for schools that do have the program for those who have special needs, it is vital. And my mother worked at the Eastern Christian Children's Retreat, and I have been able to be with people who have Asperger's or autism. And sometimes music is that one thing that you can use to connect to someone who is autistic. And a good friend of mine actually also taught kids special needs, and it was new to him. And when he did it, the principal said, "You are the very first person who has ever made a connection to this one young adult." And that alone is such a gift, and that alone is such um, an important thing, even if it's just one person. I feel myself getting kind of emotional here. So
Yeah.
I'm so glad to know that you did that, and that you continue doing this with your philanthropy. So I thank you very much for that.
Yeah, no, that's my pleasure. It is. It's, and like another like funny quick anecdote was, when I was still up there teaching, um, I would be out sick one day or whatever, and my like regular kids couldn't care. It was a day without Stefanacci. They probably celebrated in class, but I would come back, and I would have notes from every student in the special needs class. Get better soon. Hope we see you next week. I mean, and that stuff that makes you cry at 8 o'clock in the morning. It's so like you said, it's just so, music is so powerful, and we take it for granted so much of the time. And these kids and these adults, if they can get some help, then that's a beautiful thing.
That's wonderful. Well, I'm so glad that we had a chance to talk tonight. I hope to see you soon performing. I hope to see you soon when you come to get your library card. And and I can't thank you enough. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Nick. You have a wonderful night, everybody.
Thanks so much, Patty. I'll see you soon.